This is Michael Cowen, and welcome to Trial Lawyer Nation.
You are the leader in the courtroom, and you want the jury to be looking to you for the answers.
When you figure out your theory, never deviate.
You want the facts to be consistent, complete, and credible.
The defense has no problem running out the clock. Delay is the friend of the defense.
It's tough to grow a firm by trying to hold on and micromanage.
You've got to front load a simple structure for jurors to be able to hold on to.
What types of creative things can we do as lawyers, even though we don't have a trial setting?
Whatever you've got to do to make it real, you've got to do to make it real. But the person who needs convincing is you.
Welcome to the award-winning podcast, Trial Lawyer Nation, your source to win bigger verdicts, get more cases, and manage your law firm. And now, here's your host, noteworthy author, sought-after speaker, and renowned trial lawyer, Michael Cowen.
Today on Trial Lawyer Nation, I am joined by attorneys Drew Gilliland and Teana Overton out of Georgia. They got a fantastic $1.8 million verdict on a tough trip and fall case with only $7,100 in medical bills, and they're nice enough to come on and talk to us about how they did it. How you all doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Drew?
Great. Thanks for having us on, Michael.
Oh, thanks for coming on. Those are such tough cases, and to get a result like that, I really, really want to learn. Before we get started, though, as always, I want to thank our sponsor, LawPods. LawPods, you've met them getting ready for this. They make it so easy because they do all the recording, editing, make sure that we sound good and look as good as I'm capable of looking. Jury it's out on how good that is. But LawPods is really great to work with. So if you consider doing your own podcast, I highly recommend LawPods.
And they've been great to work with, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. So, Drew and Teana, I'd like each of you just tell me a little bit about yourselves.
Ladies first.
Okay. So I'm Teana Overton. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, born and raised. Went to law school here. I'm pretty young. I've been licensed almost three, going on 4 years. Been doing some trial work with Drew.
And she's doing a phenomenal job. She's my new trial partner. And my name is Drew, and I was actually born and raised in Orlando. And I came up here to Georgia because I went to law school at Emory. And I worked as a prosecutor, then did insurance defense, and I've been doing personal injury since 2017.
Well, Drew, first of all, I want to give you kudos for insisting on bringing Teana on because, I heard about the verdict and talked to you, thought I think this would be a great thing to talk about because those are tough cases. And you said, well, Teana tried it with me. I need to bring her on. And so many people don't do that. They go and they take all the credit for themselves. And, maybe that's appropriate when you're an older lawyer and you're senior. I'm not sure. But I really do admire the fact that you're sharing the credit and sharing the glory with the woman who worked the case with you.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. The verdict would not have been possible without her help. So she definitely deserves credit for it.
Well, give me a little bit of background on the case.
Yeah, so I'll take this part because Teana, she came on maybe 2 or 3, was about 3 weeks before the trial?
Yeah, about 3 weeks.
And so I had been living with the case since 2017, and the courts, this happened in 2015, but we signed the case up in 2017, right before the statute ran. And of course, the court shut down because of COVID, so that took 2 years out. So by the time we took this case to trial, it had been 9 years since she was injured. And she is just a phenomenal woman. She worked in the grocery store business for 40 years. She worked at Kroger, and she put 2 kids through college on a grocery store salary, which I don't know how you do that, but she found a way. And she's a church-going lady, and just her friends and family came and testified for her, and one of her friends even borrowed money against her 401k to help our client.
Wow. Which
I've never heard of before, but that's the kind of person she was.
Tell me about the liability facts.
So the liability facts were tough. She tripped on a sidewalk that was located in front of Quick Trip. She went there early in the morning. She was working an overtime shift at Kroger, and it started at 4:30 in the morning, and she got to Quick Trip at 4 a.m. And as she was walking in the store, she went in. She has they sell her favorite tea, and she was walking in to get the tea, but the tea machine was down. And as she was walking back out to her car, she tripped and fell on the uneven sidewalk, and she tried to break her fall, and she did. Unfortunately, she broke her pinky finger, but it was a bad break that required surgery. She had a comminuted fracture on the joint that's like located right where the wrist is.
What does comminuted mean?
So it means the bone, basically, the way I described it at trial, was the bone exploded.
Breaks them in lots of little pieces.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's a timely one for me, because as you know, I tripped on some uneven sidewalk while walking a week and a half ago and braced myself for a fall. Mine was luckily not comminuted, but I got a little fracture of my radius right by the elbow. So luckily I don't need surgery, but I have a lot of sympathy for your client and how easy it is to trip on uneven things because you're focused. I'm running, I'm having a conversation with somebody.
Yeah.
Not looking exactly where my feet are because I'm looking at the road ahead of me or the sidewalk ahead of me, and just, I don't know what happened. I just hit it wrong and fell down and tried to catch myself, and boom.
And you still presented at the ATA conference too.
Yeah, I didn't even know it was broken. I mean, I knew it hurt, and I didn't have full range of motion, but I was able to hide it. I don't think anyone but people that were really close to me that I told knew that I was hurt. I went to the party that night. I was singing karaoke that night. It's really, when you have all these people saying, well, how could you have been hurt? You didn't go to the hospital. You didn't go to the doctor that day. There's video of me doing all kinds of stuff that day at that conference, and yet I had a broken bone. It's objective. There's no question that I don't have a broken bone. And it really, the fact that you do have that initial adrenaline, the biggest thing I had is I was embarrassed. Mm-hmm. And then I finished my run. I mean, I'd run 5 miles. I only had like another quarter mile to get back to the hotel. What am I going to do? I finished my run, and then I had to speak. I had stuff to do, and I just, powered through it.
Yeah.
I also found out tequila is a very effective pain reliever, temporarily, that evening for anyone that was at karaoke with me. But the fact is, you can get hurt, and the last thing I was thinking about was documenting a scene or seeing a doctor. I just thought this is going to get better. It's just got to be a sprain, and I wouldn't even gone to the doctor the next day if my partner Mallory Peacock hadn't on the flight home like, Michael, you need to go to the doctor. Promise me you're going to go to the doctor. I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
It's going to be a sprain, but just so you feel better, Mallory, I'll go to the doctor. And
yeah.
Lo and behold, they did X-rays and
it's fractured.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was so we actually Teana and I met with your friend and our friend Joe Freed.
Yeah.
Before the trial, because, and I'll show you a picture of the sidewalk, but the sidewalk, it looked perfect. I mean, you could not see an elevation change. It was only, the elevation change was just 0.44 inches. So it was under half an inch. But in Georgia, we have the life safety code, and I think it's pretty much the law in every state, but an elevation change of more than 1/4 of an inch has to be beveled. And this one obviously wasn't. But fortunately, the Quick Trip employee put a magazine down over the elevation change. And the only way you could see the elevation change was from the slope of the magazine. But we met with Joe because it like I said, the sidewalk looked perfect, and Joe's advice was really powerful. He said, just lean in, own that fact. How do you still win if that's true? And what he recommended is, look, it's a hidden hazard. And so that's how we kind of flipped this, what looks like not a hazard, into a serious hazard. Is, that's what makes it so dangerous, is that it is so small. And, if it's a major hazard, you should see it. So that advice really, really helped us. So I want to thank Joe too while I'm at it.
Yeah, he's awesome, and he's so giving and sharing.
Yeah.
But I think that is also so powerful. It's like embracing that, what some people would see as a bad fact is that the defect, the hazard, is not visible in a photograph. So, when you first show it to a jury, they might think, well, I don't see anything there. But then saying, yeah, that's why it's so dangerous. And that's why we have these roles.
Yeah.
Because you don't see it and you can't see it, but it can still trip you. And I think that's so important. How did you prove to the jury that was dangerous?
So we had an expert that I had used when I was on the defense. We used to when I was doing defense work, we represented Fortune 500 companies and these kinds of disputes. And I had used him when I was on the defense, and so I figured if he can give me a favorable opinion, then the defense probably won't even bother hiring an expert, because I hired basically their expert. And it took a lot of work. The Quick Trip actually repaired the sidewalk, so we had to use photogrammetry analysis to figure out what the elevation change was, and it came back at 0.44 inches. And so our expert could safely say that violated the life safety code, and the defense didn't dispute that.
Okay. Well, I think that's such a huge difference that you had a code. It wasn't just you should have done this, an argument about that. I mean, it definitely followed the code. Then the question is that really dangerous, or is it just kind of like a regulatory violation without any real meat to it?
Right. And so one of the things, and I actually thought this was pretty creative, one of the defense attorney was phenomenal. He's a very good attorney, sharp and a straight shooter. He doesn't, play games. But when he deposed our expert, what he did is he had somebody go out to the courthouse where we were trying the case. And he went to one of our offices. We have 4 offices, but he went to one of our offices and photographed the sidewalk in front of our office. And of course, the sidewalk in front of our office looked way worse than the sidewalk at Quick Trip. And same with the courthouse sidewalks. They looked way worse than the sidewalk at Quick Trip. And so he kind of put our expert in a position to say that, well, the person who hired you, they should probably fix their sidewalks too, right? And our expert, to his credit, he said, yeah, they should correct their sidewalks. But it was uncomfortable for our expert, because he's basically, having to say that, our sidewalks are violating the same law that Quick Trip did. But that was something, again, talking about judo law, flipping that on the defense, is that in the case of our sidewalk and the courthouse sidewalk, you could see those hazards. They were pretty visible. And so you at least had the opportunity to see that the sidewalk was messed up and avoid it. Here you didn't have that opportunity.
So Teana, when you first got involved in the case, how long before trial was it?
Maybe 3 weeks before trial.
And was this an obvious slam dunk case that you all were excited about when you first saw it?
Drew was excited. I saw it. He sent me the video, and I said, "Yeah, I don't think this is going to go well, but I'm going to try it with you, of course."
Okay. Was there a process where you came to believe in the case?
Yeah, meeting the client. We met with the client one weekend, I think like early on a Saturday morning, and spent the day with her. And after just spending time with her, I understood how he was viewing the case based on who she was.
Tell me about that.
So she kind of gives you the traditional grandmother vibes. So she's very homey, very nurturing. When I spent time with her, we just talked. We didn't talk about the case. I just wanted to know who she was, what hobbies that she had, things of that nature. And so I'm local, so I'm from here, and she's also from here. So we were just talking about different things that happened in Atlanta, see if we knew the same people, things of that nature. I actually knew one of her sons. She had 2 sons. Well, has 2 sons. I knew one of them around the same age as her children, and we just really hung out with her for the day. And I was like, wow, I understand.
Where did you meet with her?
At one of our offices.
Okay. And so what was it about, okay, you knew you liked her, you knew you believed her, but how did that make a difference about whether the sidewalk was dangerous?
She didn't come across as someone, who would lie about her injuries at all. I did talk to her some about how her injuries halted some of the things that she liked to do. So like she liked to cook. She really liked children. So I have a toddler, and I think one time we met with her, I think I had my toddler with me, and just seeing the interaction between them and the ways that she was limited in playing and doing the things that she wanted to do.
So how was she limited? I mean, I know it's a badly broken pinky, but it's a pinky. I mean, how is a pinky worth $1.8 million?
We have to ask the jury, but I think it's more than just the pinky. So sure, it was to the pinky, but the bone actually shattered to where she had to have surgery. And we're talking about a woman who worked for 44 years, a single mom who never missed work except for giving birth to her children, and she missed work because of this. And she even had side jobs because she was putting her sons through college. And she tried to work through it and just couldn't. She didn't run up an extreme amount of medical bills. She wasn't trying to oversell an injury. Originally, she just wanted her bills paid for.
Yeah.
So how did this affect her permanently?
So she has trouble doing her hair. She used to cook these big elaborate meals she worked at Kroger. So the night shift, she would come in and feed them all. At church events, she would bring food and kind of cater to all of them. It limited her home cooked meals for her sons. She also was a really avid bowler. I don't know too much about bowling, but apparently people were pretty impressed with her score. But I know she was in a league and won some championships. She was no longer able to do that. There was an incident where she almost dropped a child because she wasn't able to hold and grip the child the way she wanted to. So just limited in those things.
Absolutely. How did you present the damages?
You mean, well, so in the closing, we did a per diem argument, and some states allow those, some states don't. Georgia allows them. We did a per diem argument, and to be honest, I was kind of, well, let me back up. The defense admitted liability on the day of trial, literally in their opening statement, they admitted liability, and they praised our client. They were very complimentary to her. But in their closing, they requested that the jury return $21,000. And that amount of money would have triggered their offer of settlement. And maybe Texas has this, where you send an offer to the other side, and if they don't accept it and you don't beat that offer, you're on the hook for their attorney fees.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So they did that. And the number they gave to the jury would have triggered that offer of settlement. So, that would have bankrupted our client. And that's one of the things before the trial Teana and I talked to Ms. Robinson about is, we said, look, they sent this offer of settlement and I volunteered to waive our fee. We just had to get our expenses back, but I volunteered to waive our fee if she wanted to take it so she wouldn't, have to file for bankruptcy. But when they did that, it made me really mad because I felt like, I'm not saying the defense attorney was being hypocritical or two-faced or anything, but I understand he was doing his job. But it made me angry that he requested that amount of money be returned so that he could collect attorney fees on our client. So when I got up, I kind of just went with I asked for $8.8 million.
Yeah.
And I did a damages board, and there's 11 factors under the pain and suffering jury charge in Georgia, and I put a number in for each amount. And there are a few categories I put 0 for, but it ended up totaling $8.8 million. And obviously the jury didn't agree with that, and they returned $1.8 million, which we were still
absolutely
happy about. But I was a little frustrated when I got up there, so I wasn't as thorough as I normally am.
Yeah, I want to back up a little bit. How did y'all split the trial?
Teana took the witnesses and the plaintiff, Ms. Robinson.
I did a direct of plaintiff and then all the pain and suffering witnesses.
Yeah.
And you did open, close, and
the corporate rep. Yeah. And the doctor testified by video.
And who did, so you did jury selection, open, closing?
Correct.
When did you first mention a dollar amount?
I think we mentioned that in opening, but we basically asked if anybody would have a issue returning a verdict for millions of dollars if the evidence supported it.
In jury selection?
In jury selection, yeah. We can't mention a specific dollar. I mean, it's kind of judge dependent in Georgia, but for the most part, you really can't mention a specific dollar amount, but you can say millions and millions or a very large amount of money.
Yeah, I think that's, different people have different opinions on that. I found there's been a theme. More people who are getting big verdicts seem to talk about money in voir dire than don't.
Yeah, I don't mention it in opening statement. I know a lot of attorneys, including Joe and his partner Michael, they'll actually give the dollar amount in opening statement. I have never felt comfortable doing that for some reason. I wish I could, but I'm always concerned that I'm going to mention this dollar amount and then the defense is going to bring out some smoking gun for him, because in Georgia, at least impeachment evidence, you don't have to disclose in the pretrial order.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so if they have some smoking gun that you don't know about, and you and you mention this large amount of money, and then in closing you have to say, yeah, that those millions of dollars, we're really just looking for 20,000.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm a believer in doing it, but I'm also a big believer is you have to do what fits you. And the worst thing you can do is just go up there and try to be Joe Freed or Michael Leeserman or whoever. Nick Rowley, whoever else it is, who's a great trial lawyer. I mean, they're great because they're themselves. And if you're doing something you're not comfortable with because that's what someone else does, it's not going to work for you.
How did you learn that right away, or how many jury trials did it take for you to learn how to be yourself?
About 100, honestly.
Yeah. So when I started off as a prosecutor, and I had the good fortune of I had probably a jury trial every week. It was like, low-level felonies. But in my first year, I had 50 jury trials. And it's impossible to get that kind of experience in the civil world. So I always tell, lawyers coming out of law school, if you can get a job with like the public defender or the DA, you're not going to make a lot of money, but you'll be more than compensated with the trial experience you get.
Yeah, there's something about getting there. I had to do a lot of personal growth. I had to become happy about who I was in order to be who I was, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I may have needed a little more work than most people on that front. But I will tell you that when I let go of having to follow a certain, and it's not like I don't read the great books and listen to the great lawyers and try to take what works for me that they do. But once I got off script and said I'm just going to be me instead of me trying to imitate someone else or give someone else's argument, I started doing a lot better. And it also became a lot more fun.
Yeah, definitely. I'm still working on that myself, even though I have, a lot of jury trial experience. It's still always a struggle because you see, like you mentioned, the greats do it, and then you want to try to do what they do, but it never works for me.
Yeah, me neither. There are some things that they do that fit with me and it's comfortable, but other things I try to do and it just doesn't feel right. And when you're not comfortable, then you don't have that exchange of energy with the jury.
Yeah, exactly. And I think credibility and being authentic in front of a jury is probably the most important thing.
So much more important than what words you use or what your structure is, or I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, 100%.
So what have you done over the years to develop your trial skills so that you can try these kind of cases?
Well, for me, and then Teana can speak. Teana's she's doing phenomenal. She's only been practicing for 3 years, and she's trying cases with me, and she always does great work. Very far advanced for the years she's been practicing. So for me, like I mentioned, I was very fortunate. I had a good first job where I got a lot of jury trial experience. And then I did insurance defense in-house for Geico. And that was my first foray into civil, personal injury work. And we obviously had a lot of jury trials there. And then when I got onto the personal injury side, which is what I always wanted to do, it was, my first job was with Morgan & Morgan. So I got to learn from Keith Mitnick and Rick Block and those guys. And so I would just watch every single trial I could watch and then read all the trial guide books. And by the way, I need to tell you, anybody who's listening, if you do trucking cases, please buy Michael Cowen's book. It is phenomenal. It will save you so much time and expense if you read that book. It's phenomenal.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know with Teana, I'm interested to hear it.
Yeah, Teana, what have you done? I mean, you're doing, light years ahead of where I was at your level of experience. What have you done to develop the skills to try cases?
I think people skills. I'm really good with people and making people feel safe to open up and tell me what's going on. But really, my background. So I grew up, in Atlanta, so in the city. But my grandparents, they're small town country folks. They have a farm in Southwest Virginia. So I kind of got the best of both of those worlds, and I'm really good at talking to people, relating to people, and just really studying people and how they move, how they think.
And what are your plans for continuing to develop your trial skills?
Yeah, continuing to go to trial.
Well, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and I think something that works really well for Drew and I is we get along really well. We have a great working relationship, even outside of work, we're friends. So I think in the courtroom, when the jury see our interaction, for me being so young, it's really respectable to Drew and how it's not like, oh, I'm just a young associate brushing me off. I really have an input in the trial, and they notice that he respects me. So it's more collaborative. And I think that comes across in front of the jury.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Do you think there's anything to the male-female team in trial?
Yes. Yeah, I think Drew and I come from different backgrounds. So I think like he has maybe a different worldview than I do. Sometimes it's the same, but we have, pretty good opinions, and we are comfortable enough to each other to like discuss them. And I don't think that happens in a lot of spaces that we're in. But for us, it works. And we talk about very complex or maybe touchy situations. We just have an open dialogue and open communication about those things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think especially like, not to be like too political here, but I think, because I'm a white male, I think that the world is obviously changing, and that's, probably for the better. But there is a dynamic that, as a white male, you kind of have to realize like it's probably not going to look good if you're over here telling people what to do and where to go and things like that. Fortunately, I'm not good at that anyway, and that's just not my personality. And so it never would happen. But I think Teana's absolutely right. Like we just get along well as friends. And so if I ever try to like boss her around, it was, she would probably tell me to go jump in a lake or something.
There'll be some choice words.
Yeah. It'd be more than, it'd be very, different words than that. But so that it helps when you're just trying a case with a friend. But definitely being like the lead attorney, I'm sure you've tried cases with younger attorneys, and you probably don't want to look like the guy who's barking orders. It just isn't a good look.
You don't. And I really believe if you're going to try a case especially with a woman, you need to make sure she speaks and that it plays a meaningful role in trial, because you're going to have women jurors. And if you become that guy that holds them back, that doesn't treat them well, that, you can, very much put yourself in a bad place in the jurors' minds.
Yeah.
So, plus I think, because we're all different, I think that different people connect to different members of the jury differently. And so, like when Mallory Peacock and we've been trying cases for 11 years now. And so, it's very collaborative for us. And we actually split the opening, we split the jury selection. I can't do that with everybody. I mean, we've developed a level of trust and a rhythm that lets us do that. But I think it's been ultra effective because Mallory and I are so different, we connect with different people differently, and so that the whole is greater than some of the parts. Whereas when I have other lawyers, if a lawyer's going to try a case with me, they're going to do work, they're going to speak in front of the jury, they're going to, I want the jury to see that I respect the other lawyer enough, unless it's truly just like a one-year associate that might just get one witness. But generally, they're going to be doing a major part of the trial. But I don't have necessarily the rhythm to split an opening or split a jury selection with them, until we've tried enough cases together to develop that. There is, the client comes first too. And so if someone's never picked a jury before and we're trying a big case, I want to pick the jury. Unless, but once someone's been there with me, and then they can do part of it, and then more, and then until eventually where I'll sit back and watch someone else pick a jury. But you have to develop that relationship with somebody.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that Teana's really good at is, like she said, she's good with people, and she does have a diverse background. Like I think her mom is white and her dad is African American. And so she's, can fit into different, like she can just talk to anyone because of her background.
That's awesome.
And for me, I think, honestly, like I think once you get good at it, like cross-examining an expert witness it seems like it's supposed to be the most difficult part of trial. Once you kind of get good at it, I think it's much easier. I think direct exam of fact witnesses can actually be surprisingly difficult because they're not professional witnesses. And so they can kind of go off the rails. And Teana has always been very good at making people feel comfortable when they're being questioned. And that's a skill set that I think can be taught, but I think she has it I think she was just born with that. And, because when you have a witness it's one thing to talk to them on the phone or practice with them in your office. It's totally different when they're in front of a jury and like 12 people are staring at them. A judge in black robes is like above them and staring down at them. It can be really nerve-wracking. So, and of course, the damage witnesses are some of the most important witnesses in the trial. And so Teana just always does a really fantastic job questioning them and making them feel comfortable.
Yeah, I think the direct of lay witnesses is so much harder than anything else we do because they don't have practice. Like, cross is easy. We get to ask the questions. We control things. I mean, we are like they're leading questions.
Yeah.
And typically they're professional witnesses. We've got prior depots. We know what they're going to say. We know how they're going to react. Whereas, when you're putting up some person who's never testified before, who's not super sophisticated, you don't know what's going to happen.
Right. I'm happy to say that.
And having the patience, which I don't have, there's a whole skill set of having the patience to sit down with somebody and take them through the process that they need to be an effective witness.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've learned is I'm capable of doing it, but it doesn't spark joy for me. And there's other people like Teana, like some of the men and women I practice with, that are really good at it and they love it. And that's one of the great things about finding a team is you find who does what well and you do it all together.
Each year, the law firm of Cowen Rodriguez Peacock pays millions of dollars in co-counsel fees to attorneys nationwide on trucking and commercial vehicle cases. If you have an injury case involving death or catastrophic injuries and would like to partner with our firm, please contact us by calling 210-941-1301 to discuss the case in detail and see where we can add value in a partnership. And now, back to the show.
Yeah, and that really helped, and I think that kind of came through with the jury that we just it didn't appear to be like I'm the experienced one, she's the inexperienced one. I don't think if you asked the jury after the trial like who has more experience, I don't think they could have told you.
Oh wow. I'm old enough where people figure it's me. When you start getting the gray on the sides, so how did you find? I mean, how many what I call late witnesses or before and after witnesses did you have, and how did you find them?
We had 3. We had her best friend and her 2 sons, but we actually had a list to choose from, probably of 10 folks. And I called them all and talked to them all. I knew I wanted the sons there for obvious reasons. But as far as her friend list, it was about availability, who could actually be there during trial, what week. All of them had fantastic stories about her. There wasn't one person who I called and talked to that I was afraid to put up.
And you talk about stories. I think that's so important. I want you to elaborate on that because a lot of times they think they just should go up there and say, well, she was fine before and now she's hurt and now she can't do anything, which isn't very persuasive. How did you discover the stories and what stories to bring out through these witnesses?
Well, actually, some of them told me new stories while they were over there. But she's just such a genuine person that every story that anyone tells about her is so authentic and pure that you just like her. She's a jokester. Yeah. She likes to play pranks. She pretended to win the lottery one time.
Oh wow!
She does a lot of different things. She is kind of like a class clown in a way, but also very strict with her sons. Like she would show up to the school when they were doing wrong things. I know spanking is controversial. She has spanked them in front of their class when they were in when they were in grade school. She has embarrassed them, but her sons really respect her. on the stand, the first time I had heard this story is her oldest son got a second job and saved for at least a year, it might have been more than a year, to take her to Hawaii. And he flew her, the younger brother, and I think someone else, they all took a family vacation to Hawaii that he had got a second job just to pay for because that was a dream of hers. So she's just very respected in her community and liked.
And I like that. It's so off code too. I mean, if the code is, someone that's trying to, they fall down on purpose, or they fall down through their own negligence and they're trying to just cash in, that is so the opposite of what you're talking about. It really, that humanization and showing that this is a good person, part of our community and not someone else. I think that's so important.
Yeah. And Teana had one of the friend, she had the jury. The jury was laughing. I mean, she was telling stories that you could just hear all the jurors were laughing at these stories, and I forgot what all she talked about, but
she was fantastic.
Yeah, she was phenomenal.
That is so brave, and I want to talk to you a little bit more about that, because some people would be scared of having the jury laughing because this is serious. Someone's hurt. I mean, we can just talk about how sad everything is. It sounds like you're telling stories of joy. Why is that?
Because I think the stories demonstrate who she was prior to the fall. So we're saying, basically she was this joyous person and she got pleasure out of serving others. So showing up for other people in various ways, playing jokes, things like that, and how she kind of changed after the incident and she was no longer able to do some of those things, or maybe not as joyous as she was prior.
And
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, one of the things I was going to say is that one of the things that Teana and I always work on is developing witness testimony that is lighthearted and funny if they can be funny. If they're not funny, we don't ask them to be funny, but also focusing on the positive things in life. Because I would much rather have a happy jury than an angry jury or a sad jury. We moved the case fast. It was we started Tuesday morning, we closed Thursday morning. But for me, and I know Teana as well, we really want to bring lightheartedness to the trial, and have the witnesses focus on not so much all the tragedy that's happened, but on all the hopefulness that remains.
And I also want to chime off of that. I also think it makes our client relatable. So when you have someone who's relatable, or, when I think of Miss Robinson, I think about my grandmother. And it's that's who I vision her as based on the stories that I've heard about her. So I think for the jury, perhaps they have someone in their family or a friend that they know who has those characteristics, the one who shows up for everybody.
And I think that's so important, and I'm glad you're brave enough to do it. So, when you're telling the stories of the happy times, there has to be joy, there has to be laughter, there has to be energy. And you have to have that contrast with the after. And even the after can still have some happiness, because you want to show that someone's struggling and doing their best and they're still a good person that's, worthy of help from the jury. And I think, if you think about watching a movie, when they're showing, if it's a tragedy, they show the happy times before the bad thing happens. Yeah. They don't just show life was great before, no, it's awful. I mean, they show the laughing and the fun, and then they show the horrible thing happen, and then they show the person trying to battle back. And I think having that full emotional range is so important. I'm so proud of you for doing that.
Thank you.
It made me smile when I heard that.
Thank you.
So I've always been scared to take these kind of cases. You've been on both sides. So what are some things that you look for in deciding whether or not to take a trip and fall or slip and fall case?
So, the first thing is the client. That at least as far as my decision on whether to take the case the distance, it's always, is the client going to present well in front of a jury? If they're not, I don't care how strong their case is liability wise, it's probably one that, would need to settle if there's a fair offer. But the other thing is that, so at least for premises cases, there's the trip and fall and the slip and fall. And so the slip and fall is typically like a liquid on the floor or something like that. With trip and fall cases, I think those are very good case. I think those are great cases because at least in Georgia, if there's a code violation, the owner of the property is presumed to have knowledge of it. So it's really challenging for the defense to win on summary judgment. And at trial, it kind of, you can make arguments about, look, this defect didn't just appear overnight. It's been there for a while. And so one of the things that, Quick Trip did is some of their defenses, one was that nobody had ever tripped and fell on the sidewalk before. And they said, I forgot how many, it was like 10,000, 16,000 people a week. Go on that sidewalk and nobody tripped and fell. And so again, we kind of flipped that on them to say, well, okay, nobody tripped and fell, but you also endangered 16,000 people every week. And so that was the way we flipped that on them. But it was a defect that didn't just happen overnight. And so it helps when you can say, look, the defendant should have known about this. This took years to develop. And so it helps because, what were you doing in the past 5 years? Did anybody check the sidewalk? Does anybody at your company know what the life safety code is? And of course, nobody knew it at Quick Trip. So we got to use that evidence against them.
That's great. And you also spent the money and hired a decent expert.
Yeah. That's a problem. That's the downside of these cases. It does require expert testimony to establish code violations. But if you can get that, and what a great code, by the way, it's called the Life Safety Code. I mean, I can't think of a better description for a rule than life safety.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we kept hammering that home, and we got to use it. We're like, look, I mean, the code is literally called the Life Safety Code. It is there to save people's lives. And so I personally like the static defect trip and fall cases more than the slip and fall cases, because with the slip and fall, it's like, the liquid had been there for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, it's typically not there for 5 years.
Yeah. And then you got to, who spilled it and how visible was it and what is reasonable. Yeah, I agree that an architectural defect or something that's been there for a long time is a much better case.
Yeah, absolutely. And then so that's, but the plaintiff is typically the most important factor. I don't know. What do you think, Teana?
I mean, there were some things in this case that I don't think we've talked about yet that, particularly this one, that helped. So after Miss Robinson fell, she sat in her car for a few minutes, and then she went back in and told the clerk, hey, I fell outside, I'm injured. I'm not sure what else she told her, but she did not tell her where she fell. She just told her that she fell. And the clerk called the manager and then went outside directly to the spot that Miss Robinson fell without Miss Robinson telling her where she fell.
Oh,
yeah.
And so I think that was something that, stuck out to me anyway. There was a couple incident, well, not a couple. There was an incident with the video footage. So the fall happened at, was it 3:50 a.m.?
3:55.
3:55 a.m. And it's Quick Trip's procedure to record 15 minutes prior to the fall and 15 minutes after the fall. Automatically pull that footage. Well, it was like a self-report, incident report. So it got written at maybe 3:45. Yeah. So we didn't have a significant amount of footage after the fall. And then in the footage that we did have, which wasn't helpful when you first saw it, because I'm scared of this case, but it glitches when she falls. And the way Quick Trip explained that glitch is that, when something fast happens, it just glitches, but that doesn't really make sense if your cameras are for security purposes. It's not logical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that and kind of dovetailing off of what Teana said. So the client, when she went inside and reported the fall, and they did the incident report, apparently our client said she fell at 3:45 a.m. And all that information is sent to corporate headquarters at Quick Trip, and they then pulled footage from 3:30 a.m. to 4 a.m. But what happened is after she fell and kind of gathered herself, because she hit her head on the sidewalk too, she went back in the store, and the store actually had audio. And when she went back in to report the fall, the video had already shut off because they stopped it at 4 a.m. She went in shortly after 4 a.m. And so her telling the clerk what happened and the clerk going outside and putting a magazine on the sidewalk and taking photographs, all that was erased. And so that was an issue. The fact that the video, it's hard to describe, but basically it looks totally normal. And then when she is falling down, the video just glitches, and it's like her body just kind of like turns into multiple colors, and then
weird.
Yeah, it was really weird. And we had 16 different cameras. There were no glitches on any of the other footage, just right when she fell. And the corporate rep at trial, fortunately, the corporate rep, they had two corporate reps. One of them, at first he kind of fought me, and then I had his deposition transcript and I impeached him. And then after that, he just started saying yes to all my questions, and he was off the stand in like 2 minutes. The other corporate rep was more, I guess, more of an advocate for Quick Trip, or more litigious. And so he wanted to fight me on everything. And so I don't even know if he really believed this, but he did say, he's like, well, it probably glitched because she moved fast. And then I was able to say, well, so if somebody robs the store, do you think they're going to move quick or slow? and that kind of like, you could tell the jury, like, I don't know if you're in trial when you can kind of feel the jury.
Yeah.
Like they sort of sense that you're making a good point. I could kind of feel the jury was with us at that point. So, yeah.
And the sidewalk being repaired.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It was repaired like a month after.
And Quick Trip said that it was already scheduled to be repaired.
Yeah.
So it's not a remedial measure then.
Right. But I think that fact that it was already scheduled is still helpful, because it just shows that you all were aware that there was something wrong with this area. Yeah.
And a lot. Oh, go ahead.
Out of curiosity, did you do anything with the name Quick Trip on a trip and fall case?
We thought about it. We wanted to like change our logo to somebody falling. We didn't. We didn't want to,
Yeah, I think it'd be tempting, but maybe too cute. That's the.
Yeah,
I was just wondering. It's like Quick Trip. Someone trips. It just, I don't know.
Yeah, and Quick Trip, surprisingly, they actually have a pretty good reputation, at least here in Georgia. It's a Canadian company, and from what I could tell, they, like, a lot of their employees, they hire internally and they work up to management positions. But yeah, so it wasn't like having a corporate defendant on the other side who was not well liked.
Yeah. So tell me the story of how the verdict came in.
So that was a new experience for me. During jury deliberations, they came out. The first question was so I had a damages board that I hand wrote the numbers into, and they asked if they could have the damages board back there with them during deliberations, and we all agreed that no, they couldn't do that. The second question came back, and they said they were deadlocked at 1.5 to 2.5 million. And then the judge said, well, you have to keep deliberating. And then we got the verdict. It was written, the way they wrote it, they put on the amount, they put 1.8K. And then for liability, they put 100% on our client. And so
oh my gosh.
Yeah, so Quick Trip moved for a mistrial based on an inconsistent verdict. And to be perfectly honest, that was a first for me. And so we started researching case law and like what's supposed to happen in that situation. Unfortunately, there's good case law that you're supposed to, tell the jury to keep deliberating. And then if they can't come to a solution, you can then question the jurors. But yeah, that was a scary moment. But
so they thought the K was $1 billion instead of 1,000.
I don't know what I don't know.
Oh my gosh!
I was trying to pretend like I didn't know what the K meant. I'm like 1.8K. That must mean million. But so it went back to the jury, and they came back with the 1.8 million written in, and then they put 100% fault on Quick Trip. So
wow.
I think they were just. I mean, the verdict form is pretty it's not an easy verdict form because it's multiple sections, and if you've never done it before, it's confusing. But yeah, fortunately they got it right, and it wasn't 1800. But it was fortunate that we got that question about that. That they let us know they were deadlocked in the million range, so we knew that the K wasn't 1,000.
And I think the judge handled that very well. So she didn't make any, quick, fast decisions. She was really like, oh, okay, we're gonna go look this up. And she went, from my understanding, I don't know for sure, I'm gonna assume here, she went and spoke with other judges about how to handle, this. Because it was, once we got the second question, 1.5 to 2.5 million, I kind of was like, oh, we're fine. And then we got that verdict form back, and I was like, oh, we're not fine. But I think kudos to her. She handled that very well. Judge Spencer down in Clayton County, Georgia, she handled that well.
She actually went off the bench with her staff attorney. We submitted the law to her, and she said, well, I need to research this now. And and to her credit, she listened to both sides, and rather than making a ruling just off the top of her head, she would actually research the law before making any rulings. And so that was nice that she was careful about how to approach that situation.
Absolutely. So if somebody wants to find you all to learn more about these kind of cases, maybe talk to you all about a case, how does someone find you in the world?
Well, you can Google me. I mean, I'm at Nick Schneider's law firm, and I'm with Bear Legal Solutions in Florida. I practice in both states, but I'm happy to give out my cell phone number too. It's 407-718-2128. And just if I don't answer, just shoot me a text, and I'll be happy to share all my material and whatnot from this case if anybody is dealing with a similar issue.
Well, thank you both for coming on. I really look forward to hearing about your next trials. And Teana, I look forward to hearing more and more news of your growth and your future success. Thank you all, you two, for coming on, and thanks to our audience for listening to Trial Lawyer Nation.
Thank you,
Thank
Michael.
you.
Thank you for joining us on Trial Lawyer Nation. I hope you enjoyed our show. If you'd like to receive updates, insider information, and more from Trial Lawyer Nation, sign up for our mailing list at triallawyernation.com. You can also visit our episodes page on the website for show notes and direct links to any resources in this or any past episode. To help more attorneys find our podcast, please like, share, and subscribe to our podcast on any of our social media outlets. If you'd like access to exclusive, plaintiff lawyer-only content and live monthly discussions with me, send a request to join the Trial Lawyer Nation Insider Circle Facebook group. Thanks again for tuning in. I look forward to having you with us next time on Trial Lawyer Nation.
Each year, the law firm of Cowen Rodriguez Peacock pays millions of dollars in co-counsel fees to attorneys nationwide on trucking and commercial vehicle cases. If you have an injury case involving death or catastrophic injuries and would like to partner with our firm, please contact us by calling 210-941-1301 to discuss the case in detail and see where we can add value in a partnership. This podcast has been hosted by Michael Cowen and is not intended to, nor does it create the attorney-client privilege between our host, guest, and any listener for any reason. Content from the podcast is not to be interpreted as legal advice. All thoughts and opinions expressed herein are only those from which they came.